Wonderful. Welcome, David, to the Not Quite a Podcast
Thank you.
where we are trying to open up conversations about how we change, how we understand change, how it connects with our lives and how it affects what we do and how we feel. David is a change manager, he's a football coach and a dad to teenagers, so in itself probably deserves your very own trophy. But we're here to look in a certain way at sort of some of the more typical change management things that we will see, think and hear about, and to challenge them in a way to help people have different and better conversations, both with their people and out into their organisations. So starting with that, if you think about what you do and how you approach change as a change manager, what do you do or what do you try and achieve that wouldn't be seen as sort of like a typical change management move?
I think for me it's mostly about really trying to put people at the middle of it, and it feels like that's already becoming a bit of a cliche, but at the same time it's also quite new. I think more traditionally change was, and this is something I've done in my career, was more brought about by delivering projects. So we'll do a project, we'll bundle them together, we'll do a program, we'll implement some stuff, and that will be the change. And it was much more focused on the products, what are we delivering, cost, time, quality, all those sorts of things. What I've learnt to do, and learnt is important to do, is to think about who are the people at the heart of this. What's the change? What does that mean for those people who are affected by it? And that can be in so many senses, and that's where you do start to bring in some of the more technocratic things around systems, processes, organisational structures. But really, I think for me, fundamentally, it's most important to start with the people and understand this is their world, not mine. It's their world that's going to be affected far more than mine. So I've got to try and get into their shoes, get into their heads in a helpful way, in a constructive way, to actually get them to help me understand their world and what they're concerned about, what they may be fearful of, what do they already know that I don't know but should know, because they will know their world intimately and infinitely better than I do. So I've got to try and tap into that to meaningfully put them at the middle of what's happening, give them a proper voice, give them a really a genuinely empowered voice in the change that's coming.
And I think so we know that that's the deal. Like, we know that we have to be there with the people, and a lot of people are like, well, it's just common sense, isn't it, that in order to change you have to be there with the people. But actually, from my experience and what I've seen, that doesn't always come to pass. Like, sometimes people are literally second or not thought of at all due to the type or the style of change. Do you think there's a specific blocker that sort of pushes people to be the second thought? Do you think there's or maybe a type of change that doesn't prioritise people because of its nature?
I think there's a couple of things there. I think one thing is approaches like project management are much better established and have more root in organisations, so that's the default go-to as a mechanism for doing change. But also I think it's a feature or a function of organisations just having far many more things to do than they can possibly do. The people side of anything is hardest of anything, so that's the harder work. So I think consciously or subconsciously a lot of organisations, a lot of individuals avoid it because it's harder and it will take longer to start to make progress. Whereas if you stick your project manager, your pure kind of classic traditional project management hat on, you can put a Gantt chart together, you can do breakdown structures, you can get a RAID log, all of it. You can have your cost tracker. Brilliant. Here are signs of me doing
Progress.
stuff. Exactly. Here are signs of me, to be frank, justifying the fact that I'm wearing this hat at this point in time. Going out and talking to people, well, where's that on a log? Well, it's not, because it's all in here, and it's what I feel and think and what I know about the change. So a lot of people, a lot of organisations, and I'm sympathetic towards this because it's a pragmatic choice to make, if it's a conscious choice, will steer away from the people side, at least initially, because it's harder, because it takes longer, because there's then the perception of nothing is happening.
And I think that
delivery wise,
and that indication of it's head and heart as a decision. Like, our organisations are now holding spaces for hearts. I remember, suppose in one of my first jobs, you came to it, you did the job, you went home. Like, how you felt, how it felt, it wasn't part of the conversation. Whereas now that's changing. But at the same time, when we launch into changes and we do that, it's really easy to forget because it's the hard, knotty part. And most changes drive at there being winners or losers. So we do this and you get this over here, and if we do this, you won't have that. But there's obviously that grey area in the middle that either aren't affected or aren't directly affected. How do you think we can help organisations look after almost the forgotten middle when it comes to a change?
First things first, you've got to identify that, haven't you? Yeah. I think you rightly, sadly, talk about winners and losers, and again, subconsciously, probably more than consciously, the rest often get maybe forgotten or not, or put in what I can't remember, the classic 4x4 power and influence.
Yeah.
So power and interest matrix, and it's that kind of low power, low interest. We'll just keep them informed. It's probably the bottom left in that classic matrix, isn't it? And they're the forgotten people almost, aren't they? Or they'll read the emails, they'll see the latest post on the internet. But again, it's much more about getting to understand them. It's identify them first, and then put something meaningful in place for them as a two-way thing. So it's listening and acting where appropriate, as well as informing and telling and involving, because there are very few individuals, particularly in small organisations, that aren't impacted in any way by a change, even if that impact is the fact that their best friend at work is going through the change. That's still going to have an effect on that person in that grey area in the middle. And I think we have to be mindful of that. We have to be sensitive to that, and support that person in an appropriate way. I think inevitably they're not going to get quite the same amount of love and care and affection as either the winners or the losers maybe.
Yeah.
But they're still there. The ripples are cascading out through the organisation. If their best friend at work is pissed off, then they'll probably be pissed off, if only vicariously through them, possibly firsthand, because of that best friendship that they've got. So I think it's, again, stating the obvious. Let's identify them first, and then let's do something to support them, whatever that looks like.
Yeah, I really like that. Find them. Find them, let them be seen, let them feel heard, and create that space. Yeah. But I think the thing that I really liked the most was that, obviously the model and the casual, like the models that we use and the models we choose to use, sometimes they're part of the bloody problem, because they say fill the boxes in and your problem will be solved. Where in fact, if you fill the boxes in, you sort of end up with boxes, and you have to know what to do with it and how to take it forward. And I think, well, to be honest, this is probably an entire conversation itself in terms of the tools and techniques that we use. So I'm not going to go any further on that one, because we could be here for a week. But I think, like you've already indicated part of your journey, some of the things that you've done, what you've seen, like how you've explained how organisations are working, like, change as a concept, as a profession, as a set of tools and ideas has to change and is changing. Like looking sort of like beyond that people focus potentially, but like when you look at it as a profession, as a thing, like when we talk about our careers, what do you think is the difference that you see and feel now in comparison to day one on the job, as it were?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is the fact that actually it's talked about as a thing in its own right, because my what I laughingly call my career started just over 20 years ago, so early 2000s. Civil service, project management, graduate development program, so straight to the world of Prince 2, all that sort of good stuff.
Oh, heaven forbid! Can we just take a minute for David and his Prince 2 career? Go on.
And I think back then, change management was, if it was mentioned at all, it was as a bolt-on, while you're doing your project management, here's a bit about change management, stick in the middle, and it was probably at best some comms and some training, things like that. Whereas now, it feels like over the last, maybe 5-10 years, not only does it have the recognition as a profession and a discipline in its own right, it feels to me like it's developing faster than project management was at the equivalent stage of development, if that makes sense. So I think it's becoming, partly because there's wider societal changes about the wider understanding of the importance of putting people at the centre of things, full stop, whatever it might be, that's helping it accelerate. And I think that's kind of grounds for optimism around that this has got something to it. We don't have to just go into that Prince 2 world or, another methodology. It doesn't just have to be about delivery. It has to be about, keying people up for adoption and sustained use of the new stuff, helping them get through that messy journey in as constructive a way and in as supportive a way as possible, so that they, the majority of people come through it in a healthy way. It's not always going to be perfect, is it? It's not always going to be yeah, end of sentence. It's not always going to be perfect, but we can help people get through it better.
But I love that. So, you know, I suppose there's two things in there for me. One, that our careers, our profession, that what we do actually has a brighter future that is faster and quicker and stronger than project management. So we'll take that as a win, and the fact that it's got legs. So, you know, I can now tell my mum that I've got a proper job, which will be incredible. But I think, you know, that journey, that professionalism, you know, the fact that it's becoming a tangible thing that people understand and recognise. Like that's got to be a good thing for the people that fill our walls, our teams, and our organisations, because we're saying we want to do this differently by doing it for you and with you, rather than at you and through you, which I suppose would be my experience of sort of early career territory as well.
Definitely, yeah, that really resonates with me as well. It's that idea of building capability so that people can, whether it's, you know, personal life, work life, so they're better able to deal with change themselves. Not just turning up in your Superman cape and pants outside your trousers, doing something for somebody, then buggering off again. Because guess what? The next time there's something to do, that organisation won't be able to do it. Yeah,
it's the mindset of teach a man to fish.
Yeah,
and I think that's the space that we probably both sit in.
Yeah.
Amazing. David, thank you so much for joining us for this session. I've already noticed the fact that David will be back, so we will do a session that focuses on the tools, techniques, and potentially some of the methodology stuff that we get drowned by. But until then, absolutely amazing to have you. Thank you very much, and we will see you soon.
Thank you.